Tell us a little bit about when you were like 14-ish or so.
Man, it's deeply rooted in me because I didn't grow up in church. Really, all I knew about church were, some crazy things that I saw on TV. And then I go to high school. I'm a freshman in high school. I meet some new friends. They invite me to a church event, a lock-in, and I didn't really know what that was. But then there was a cute girl, and they said there was going to be some free pizza. So I'm like, all right. So I went to church and then started going on Sunday mornings. But here's what's so awesome, and this really is why it's rooted in me, is that, and I firmly believe this, so like any church leaders or even believers, I think oftentimes we think we have to believe before we belong. And I would say that for me, I belonged before I even believed in Jesus. That it was a group of people, that it wasn't just events. While the events were fun, I was a teenager. It was my small group leader named Barry who invested into me. When I look back, those years, I don't remember the programs. Like, I don't remember the theme of camp or what the preacher preached necessarily, but I do remember the people. And I remember specifically in that midst on a Saturday night, coming before the Lord and my very first time ever praying, which this is a dangerous prayer, saying, God, if you're real, will you just show me the purpose of my life? And this is how God works, Devin. It's that very next day I go to church, this introverted skater punk kid, the preacher gets up and says, the title of today's message is the purpose of your life. I'm like, okay. So, man, the Holy Spirit grabbed me. I walked down front, this introverted kid, kind of old school. I know some churches still do this. They're like, this is Dustin. He wants to give his life to Jesus.
But my friend Dustin's story is probably a lot like yours and mine. At 14 years old, he walked into a student event for one reason. Well, a cute girl and the free pizza. He was a skater kid. I mean, Kurt Cobain was his idol. He didn't exactly fit into the church culture. And what changed his life wasn't a polished sermon. Today, I'm asking my friend Dustin and asking you, have we built influence that truly connects people or just influence that truly captures attention? That's the hard truth that we're covering in this episode today. So sit back, kick back, and relax, for this is the School of Influence. All right, and welcome to the show, my friend Dustin. Welcome to the School of Influence.
Man, thanks for having me, Devin. I appreciate it, man. This is awesome. It's a joy.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited. I love interviewing people that really have influence, especially locally, like, leading a church, helping lead a church, and all of that's difficult. I've helped start 7 churches and 9 ministries. Like, it is not for the weak-hearted to be able to lead people. And so I'm really excited.
You've been there, done that. So
yeah, it's I think that as we talk about who God has called us to be, we're called to be leaders. And it's just in different capacities. And sometimes it overlaps and into the business world. Sometimes it stays inside of a church. But, one of the things that I'm really interested in our conversation today is focusing on breaking down what it means to be connected together, whether it be in the church, whether it be in the business. But I believe that some of the things we're going to talk about, we're going to see that maybe it started in the church. And so I'd love to hear you just kind of share a little bit about what does it look like as this connected generation today? But yet, we're disconnected.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, we're disconnected, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think and that's what you were kind of saying is, we are the most connected people on the face of the planet, and yet we're disconnected. Or, we're connected online and social media and can DM anyone at any given point, but yet our relationships aren't as deep as they once were. And so it impacts us, obviously in church, but really in all aspects of life, whether you're a business leader or a mom and a dad and whatever it is. And so it's really interesting because in the church world, where I see it and kind of live is churches can be full, right? And worship services can be packed and there could be people all around. And even, like with online engagement, people are connected that way, but they're still living isolated lives. And so what you see is people that attend church, they watch, and then they leave. They give it an hour and then leave, and no one really knows their story. And I think it's really important for us just as human beings and the image bearers of God to That's how God created us in relationship. And we're missing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree. And one of the things that I see a lot of times, it's not with every church, a lot of things that we're talking about is going to be generalized
Yeah.
in churches as a whole. But I see a lot of people counting their congregation, counting the number of altar calls that are answers that come up. And sometimes I'm like, well, that's the same 50 people as last week that came up.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
we're missing something here. And so, what do you feel like is a part of that missing ingredient that like people are very active, they're there, they're open to doing something, but it's very surface level.
Yeah, well, I definitely think for any of us, we just live in a world and a culture, I would say, of skepticism. So that's definitely an uphill battle that I think, it used to be, hey, I trust you until you give me a reason not to trust you.
Mm,
And that goes in all kind of different forms in our relationships. But now I feel like I don't trust you and you have to prove to me that you can be trusted. And so when people come to church for a first time, they're very skeptical of if I give my information to you, are you going to come knock on my door tonight and scare me? And are you going to sell that information or what exactly are you selling in that? And so you have skepticism, but then you also have, man, we're just busy. I mean, I'm sure like as you have family, we're just always on the go with sports and travel and school and just different things. And so you have all of that. And I feel like people have really kind of come to a place of that skepticism and busyness where they've put deep community on the back burner. And so it's like, I can only give you a snippet here and a snippet there of my time, of my energy. And we know, like, especially after the pandemic, I mean, goodness, depression levels have increased and people feel isolated. Really, kind of their best friend is AI in some regards. And that's just not a healthy place. That's not how God created us as human beings and how he designed us.
Why do you feel like it's turned that way? Like, I don't know that I saw that in the book of Acts when, they sold property and everything to
Yeah.
take care of each other. Where do you feel like the church, people, world went wrong?
That's a good question. There's probably a lot of ways to answer that. I think obviously with the speed of information, of how quick you can get that, some people would just replace the internet with church. Like, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, the church was really the cornerstone of a community. That's where you saw people. That's where you ate dinner, like the early church, as you said in Acts. And now we are so inundated and want things immediately that we have bypassed people. And I feel like that's a really dangerous place. And so what's happened is that churches are trying to catch up with culture in some regards and tap into that, which is great. And reaching people with technology and having apps and streaming services. But really the heart of it is people. And just as you said at the beginning, we can get stuck in measuring attendance numbers and group percentages. And those are important metrics, but they never should replace people.
Mm.
They should never do that. And it's just interesting because you have that on the church end, but then you have people that are non-committal to church world. I'll give you an hour and that is it. And following Jesus and belonging to a church was just that, belonging, having a family. I couldn't imagine like coming home tonight and be like, hey, sweetie, I got an hour and then I'm going out. It doesn't work that way. I got to spend time with the people around me. I need that and they need that.
Yeah. You know, I recently was doing some things on my coaching business and focusing on where do I feel like most of my students or people that I talk to, where do they struggle with that time commitment? And what I see people doing is they're trying to find a fast track way to fast forward to get to the desired outcome of where they want to be. And
That's
it's
right.
like, you don't need to know how to be able to create an AI bot for something that you don't know how to do yourself yet. Like, you don't have
Yeah.
clarity on that. And, I feel like a lot of people say that, I'm alone or, I don't have community. And yet they're the first ones to say, I'm so busy, I don't have time for that. I believe
Mhm.
that as leaders, we create time and capacity for what we need the most, for what we have to have. And I don't believe in that saying that the higher you get as a leader, the lonelier it gets. I think that's a choice that we do create because, we should be able to increase our inner circle and or decrease our inner circle, but with the right people and
Oh, I agree.
who
Yeah.
is there. And so when it comes to things that you've seen, what do you feel like has been that turning point to where we've gone online, and so we've kind of distanced ourselves. We have soccer, we have track, we have all these different things,
Mm.
but yet we still desire relationship. Why don't we put that first?
It's a great question. I think we have let culture just rob us of God's intent in our lives and trying to keep up with the Joneses and the comparison trap. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I'll see someone on social media and think, I wish I had that many followers or look that way and that way, whatever the case may be. And so we get sucked into that and we try so hard to be someone that is against actually God's calling in general, but specifically for our life. There's only one Dustin Dozier, and I need to be me. And it might take some wrestling to kind of figure that out. And there's going to be seasons where I'm growing and being stretched. But I think oftentimes, just the world we live in, that it is exactly what you said. It is a choice because in church world, it is up to them. I can't force them to get involved in our church, but it definitely doesn't help when churches focus all of their attention on the service. Because what I've learned talking to other pastors and helping churches and church leaders really kind of lead in this way is that, yes, that's great. That's a great front door. Like they check you out online. You want the preaching to be good. You want the music to be good, but that's not what keeps them there. It's really, how do you call them out into next steps? And I think churches, not all, it's a broad spectrum, but some churches are really good at building that belonging and personality. But I met with a pastor just a couple weeks ago who literally told me, he said, we have good music and I'm a good preacher. If they want to come, they'll come. And I'm thinking, all right, you're long gone are the days where you build it and they will come. We have to be relational. We have to know people's names. We have to walk them through life and be with people for our sake and for their sake. Whether you're a pastor or church leader, a Christian, especially business leaders, you can't just treat people like numbers because then the outcome is just numbers and metrics on a paper,
Yeah, dude, it's so incredible the way that God has created us for relationship and that numbers are vanity. And they're a necessity to measure and to grow and to scale. All those things are important. But looking at social media, if I have how many followers, if I have how many comments and how many views are on my stuff, ultimately, a lot of times we forget that that's a person on the other side of the screen. And a lot of people will never stand in front of 5,000 people and share that one message that they just had on social media. And instead, we're like, oh, I only had 5,000 compared to the 5 million that Joe Schmo had. And so engagement is important on our following and the way that we do things. But also, like you said, knowing their names and being able to remember or even taking notes of things that you have had in the conversation with people really creates that community. And I remember going to a church and visiting. And the second time I went back, which was almost a month later, the guy that I sat next to remembered my name and what I did. And I said, dude, how did you do that? He's like, I actually wrote it down in a note because it's important. And I didn't feel like a number, like he was taking notes on me. It was that he genuinely wanted to remember. And that was so powerful to me that he would take the time to see me as a person.
Absolutely. And in ministry, they say roughly in the first 7 minutes that someone pulls up to your church, they're going to make a decision about your church. I often say the sermon starts in the parking lot. So if they come and they don't know where to park, they don't have a friendly face, there's no one opening the door or greeting at the door, whatever the case may be, they're making up their mind about your church. And I think it's really important for us as believers to know people because everyone has a story. And we want to step into that story, not just kind of pass them by as an opportunity or a potential customer or someone who might give and be a small group leader in our church. but we've got to care about them. That's what Jesus did. And so I love it in the sense of all throughout the Gospels, Jesus was never like, hey, meet me at the tabernacle at the 10 a.m. service. We have modern worship and it's going to be awesome. We're giving away free coffee. It was going to where they were. Now, sure, they met together, but he knew them by name and he said, hey, how can I help? And I feel like that's what we're called to as believers, but especially a church should be known for that. And no church is perfect, but man, we should be known for the type of community that we offer that the world cannot offer. And I love that. That's where my heart is. That is, man, when I work with churches, when I talk to pastors, if you can tap into that, that is what it's all about, from ministry to business. Man, let people know that they are valued and they are seen and you know them. Man, that's when they build trust with you and doors will be opened for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to like pause on that for a second because, if your church disappeared tomorrow, would anyone outside of the Sunday crowd, would they feel it? If your business or your coaching program, disappeared tomorrow, your social media disappeared tomorrow, would anybody else's life change? Are you truly having influence that you think that you are on people? Because attention that you have on people online and that are metrics driven, it is replaceable. But being a part of a community, belonging to some place, to someone, to a community, is very, very important. And so I know that you kind of had a journey of understanding belonging, and it started when you were a teenager. So tell us a little bit about when you were like 14-ish or so.
Yeah, man, it's deeply rooted in me because I didn't grow up in church. Really, all I knew about church were, some crazy things that I saw on TV and, screaming and veins popping out. And then I go to high school. I'm a freshman in high school. I meet some new friends. They invite me to a church event, a lock-in. And I didn't really know what that was, but then there was a cute girl and they said there was going to be some free pizza. So I'm like, all right. So I went to church really for all the wrong reasons, not knowing what to expect. And then started going on beyond that lock-in, started going on Sunday mornings. And here's what's interesting is that, yeah, I was a good, decent kid. Not growing up in church. My parents just kind of said, make good grades, treat people the way you want to be treated, and, be kind. But I was a skater punk. I like wore baggy jeans, and Kurt Cobain of Nirvana was like my idol. And so that's what I looked like. So my first time in church, I walk in, oversized Nirvana shirt, baggy jeans, probably had some Vans on, long hair, and everyone's wearing khaki pants and a collared shirt. But here's what's so awesome, and this really is why it's rooted in me, is that, and I firmly believe this, so like any church leaders or even believers, I think oftentimes we think we have to believe before we belong. And I would say that for me, I belonged before I even believed in Jesus. That it was a group of people, that it wasn't just events. While the events were fun, I was a teenager. It was my small group leader named Barry who invested into me. He showed me what it was like to be a Christian husband and dad, and showed up at my sporting events later in life and would text me and say, hey, how's it going? And my youth pastor who poured into me and spoke hard truth and things that were awkward as a teenager, but I so appreciate. And so it just reminded me that when I look back at those years, those very informative years, and I think we could all say this, I don't remember the programs. Like, I don't remember the theme of camp or what the preacher preached necessarily, but I do remember the people. And I remember specifically in that midst on a Saturday night, coming before the Lord, and my very first time ever praying, which this is a dangerous prayer, saying, God, if you're real, will you just show me the purpose of my life? And this is how God works, Devin. It's that very next day, I go to church, this introverted skater punk kid. The preacher gets up and says, the title of today's message is the purpose of your life. I'm like, okay. So, man, the Holy Spirit grabbed me. I walked down front, this introverted kid, kind of old school. I know some churches still do this. They're like, this is Dustin. He wants to give his life to Jesus. And in that moment, I just knew, man, I want everyone who meets Jesus, everyone who comes to a church, for it to be a place of belonging. And that passion has just continued to grow in me. And so that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm a pastor. That's why I help churches really kind of model their church after that, because it's rooted in me. It's changed my life. I deeply believe that every church should look like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And my first mission trip was very similar to I went because a hot girl.
Yeah.
And didn't turn out the way that I thought it was going to at that age. But God as well, utilized it to be able to transform my life. And I also had a youth pastor, Troy, who poured into me. And again, like you, I don't remember a lot of the messages or anything, but I remember one thing, and it was that he called me a leader, and that I was leading people to heaven or I was leading people to hell, one way or the
There you
other.
go.
And he said, if you keep on burping and farting and distracting everybody, you're not leading people to God. And I remember one time he had a football in his hand and he chucked it across the room. It was just me and him in the room, put a hole in the wall. And he said, if you're not going to serve for God, don't come back.
Wow. Could you imagine doing that nowadays?
Right?
Yeah. You'd be on the news, brother.
But as you think about, as we were growing up, it was because of the relationship that him and I had, that he already had been challenging me. He called me out as a leader. And now it was like, okay, you're leading this whole group, whether you know it or not. So do it right or don't come back. And that radically changed me. So as I hear you saying these things, it's, bringing back these memories of the ways that God called me to be a leader as well. But then at the same time, now we've seen things start to grow. And, as I helped plant the churches and the ministries, it's like, okay, now it's not just a group of, 50 people. Now we're talking thousands of people. So as you're helping lead, across different campuses and hundreds of volunteers, like how do you differentiate between what's a scalable system and what is an opportunity to have genuine shepherding?
Yeah, it's definitely, obviously in the world that we live in, it's an uphill battle, but in the complexity, the church that I serve in is multi-site. So we have 10 different locations. And so the last thing that we want is for it to be fragmented or feel like people, one of the stigmas of big church is, man, it's just a big church. They don't care about people. They just, whatever. And we have a strong conviction, at least for our models, a little bit different than most multi-site, where we don't stream a pastor across all locations. We actually believe in genuine shepherding. So each of our campuses has a teaching campus pastor. So they preach every single week because we believe that the church should have a shepherd responsible. And so I lead one of those campuses, then I oversee the next steps and really, this connection and feeling a sense of belonging across all people. And so you have to have systems in place. You have to have checks and balances and processes. But for us, what needs to remain the same is people. Because when you focus on all the systems don't talk back. I mean, I guess they kind of do with metrics and working or not working. But that's not why I'm a Christian. I'm not trying to, lead a system or a process to the gospel. It's about people. And so people are the very first thing. They're not the end result. They're the reason that we do anything that we do. So whether you're starting a business, whether you're leading a church, whether you're having conversation with someone, man, it's all about people. And so you have to keep that the goal, because then that drives why you do what you do. It's the why behind everything. I'm going to care. I'm going to do this because I want people to feel known. I want to build a culture where people are taking responsibility. And in that's when you shepherd well. And then I would even say, take it a step further, then you mentor other people for them to shepherd well. So you're decentralizing self, and not saying it's all about me, but then equipping other people and empowering other leaders to then replicate, because there's no way that I can properly lead and shepherd whatever. At our campus, we have about 600, 650 people. I can't do that adequately. So we need other people on the team that have that same passion.
Mm-hmm. How would you, so what I hear you saying is, and I think we talked about this before we started this, was about, relating that to like a customer journey for a business. And so this is like the believer's journey of, how do you get them to the church? How do you disciple them, bring them through kind of that flow? How do you see there being a good but systemized way so that people don't get lost in that in that flow?
Yeah. No, I think once again, if we focus all on the system, you can build something that really, really works. You can build an awesome product or service, but it might not do anything for them spiritually speaking. And you can even design an amazing pathway, like step 1, step 2, step 3. You can build a funnel and have that pathway and that customer journey. And that's great. We need to be intentional with that. We need to have intentional ways of taking steps and communicating those steps, whether that's to a service that you offer or a product that you want them to buy. But ultimately, we have to care about the person because the end goal is the person. And so when it comes to spiritual formation, I would say in my world that spiritual formation happens through shared life, not structured steps. And I would actually say for any pastor, business leader, you alluded to this earlier, we need people around us. It kind of feels like when you're on the ground level and you're starting, it's like, I need help. I need coaching. I need people. What do you think about this? And there's a lot of different people. And then and I don't think it's malicious intent. I don't think anybody kind of sets off with this goal, but naturally we find ourselves at the top. And then it's like, have we made the choice to share life with people that the stresses of a business owner or a pastor, I need people in my life that I can go to and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed right now. I'm in over my head. Will you pray with me? And that's how life is supposed to be. And so we can't let automation and steps and pathways take over our heart for people. We have to be centered in that. That is so important as leaders to really care for people and their heart because they do have a story. And we need to walk with them and guide them in that to introduce them to God's story.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I teach a thing called the power of 5, and that we should always have 5 people above us that we, are being mentored by, coached by, led by. We should have 5 people around us that are, at the same level as us that we can be open and transparent with, and then 5 people that we're always mentoring. And through that, we're having those personal touch points because we should never complain down, always complain up, and then be relational with the people around us. So what would you say are some of those like other personal touch points of way that you, or your churches or you encourage people to connect with other people?
Yeah, I think we always say like, be intentional with going the extra step. So for instance, in church world, people, when they might check you out online, that's the world we live in. But when they come, there's great anxiety when you check out a church. And so there's intimidation. There's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so we really coach our people, and I coach other churches, like take away the awkwardness. So have someone, as soon as they get out of their car or in the parking lot, be like, hey, how's it going? And them not to act weird. I mean, there's some weird people out there, right? So, like be natural. Don't be gimmicky. Don't be a talk show guy. It's like, hey, how's it going? But just say, hey, good morning. Hope you're doing well. And I actually think that this is true in lots of regards. I kind of put it this way, and hopefully they won't censor this out. I like to think of business and church world as the McDonald's experience versus the Chick-fil-A experience. And so, are you familiar with Chick-fil-A?
Yep.
Okay. So, it's one of those things where McDonald's, okay, if I want it, I'm going to go get it. But it's like, I'm driving through the drive-thru. I'm going to get it real quick. I'm probably going to expect not great service. It's going to take a little bit longer. My food's probably going to be messed up. And one thing I can guarantee about McDonald's is the ice cream machine is always broken. Am I true? That is gospel truth. So that's going to happen. But if I go to Chick-fil-A, man, it's going to be clean. They're going to ask me what my name is. They're going to come to my table and say, can I get you anything? They're going to say, hey, can I take that trash? And those multiple personal touch points is what makes businesses thrive. And it's certainly, when you come into the church, it will make church be so personable and to be like, man, they actually care about me here. They know my name. They actually checked on me. I wasn't just another number And so we have to have checkpoints, and we have to be very intentional to say, I just take them through this step and let it be automated. We got to check in on people and say, hey, how's it going? Can I help you with anything? What's going on? How can I pray for you? And really guide them in that instead of just throwing them in a funnel, hoping for the best and hoping they buy something at the end. We want to walk them through that. And in church world, just like in business, in church, everyone has a story, so we don't know where they're coming from. They could have great hurt and baggage. They could have financial strain. They could be going through a marriage situation. And so we don't know, but we want to meet them where they are and help them take a next step, because we can all do that. And so there's a lot of different things that I could, spout out a huge list of practical things, but that's really the heart that God calls us to in life.
How do you decipher when it is time to kind of automate some things without losing that relational touch? And then how much is, too much contact, to where somebody may perceive that, oh, you're just trying to get me on the phone. No, stop calling me, stop texting me, stop with all the emails. How do you balance that?
Man, that's a good question. I don't know if I even have that figured out, because I tend to be the guy that wants to give as much personal touch as possible. And so maybe I'm a little annoying. I don't know. We like to break it up in like a 30-day journey. And so I always say to our team, and I lead others in the sense of, hey, even a short text or personal phone call within 24 hours is huge. And it doesn't need to feel gimmicky or salesy. Just, hey, we're so glad you visited our church. That's it. And if I can help you with anything, let me know. It's like in the coaching world, like I'll download a freebie somewhere, and man, it is like my phone is inundated. I get 5 emails a day, and it actually does a reverse effect. You're annoying. So, we don't want to be that. And especially in church world, I don't want to be the annoying pastor or leader. And so what we like our process, I'm not saying it's the only process, we say within 24 hours, you're touching base personally with a phone call, a text message. One of the things that we do, I think this is huge, and we're able to do this in our system. We do handwritten notes at our church. So we have anywhere from 55 to 6,000 people on a Sunday across all of our campuses. And by Wednesday, every campus pastor is required, which sometimes it's a little loose. They're required to write a handwritten note to a first-time guest. Because when's the last time you got a handwritten note? It really says, you slowed down, you cared enough about me, and you wrote that handwritten note. Now, hopefully people can read my handwriting, but, it just says it's important. And we just can't lose sight of that. But then to answer your question about the automation, obviously there has to be, as you scale efficiency, I would just say, as you go into that, make sure it doesn't lose its personable touch, that it's not so automated behind the scenes that it's just a machine working, that you really do care, and that you have those processes, but you're checking in on people.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And one of the things that we did is we started to systemize and really scale my business was, we started to call people, and we started to automate the text messages and all these things, which is great. But what I recognized is that people weren't feeling seen. And, they just, okay, well, I didn't really think it was you. Well, I didn't really think it was, you calling. And so I was like, okay, we're going to back off from some of that automation. I'm actually going to spend a little more money and hire somebody to actually care about that person. And I really felt like that was a part of my integrity of what I needed to be able to do. If I'm going to talk about being authentic, if I'm going to talk about relationships, I need to live that out, even if it does, quote unquote, cost me a little bit more as a whole. And so I feel like that's a huge part of connection, where business, where church, where just life as a whole. We need to make sure that we're keeping that together. As we kind of begin to wrap this up, I know that you wrote a book, and I got the book. So tell us a little bit about the book called The Connected Church and what it's about.
Yeah. So, man, I never thought I would write a book, but really the heart started about 2 years ago with the burden that we're talking about today, just people being so connected, but yet disconnected, and how it's impacted the church, that people are coming and going, what I would say kind of that drive-through consumeristic mentality, that let me just consume, and I feel good about it, but I'll leave. And man, that's not how the church should be. And so what I love, and we talked about this at the beginning, in Acts 2, people were sharing meals together, they're doing life together. And then my favorite verse in that passage, I believe it's chapter 2, verse 42 through 46. He says that the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And so they were offering community, and people's lives were being radically changed. And so that should be the church. And so I kind of walk through of the disconnect. I walk through how, as pastors and leaders and key volunteers, need to be connected to God first. That's the most important connection. How are we going to lead people if we're not connected to God? And then what are some practical ways that churches and leaders can become the connected church, the church that is connected with the people in the community? A lot of churches are totally disconnected from their community. How can you preach connected sermons? How can you have small group community that's not just, lecture-based, curriculum-based, but really doing life together and sharing each other's needs and praying for each other? So really, what this has been interesting. My heart was for pastors and church leaders, but then I have regular, everyday followers of Jesus saying, man, this was a great reminder of my responsibility as a Christian within the body of Christ. And man, that's just a great encouragement. And so yeah, that's really kind of it in a nutshell. And it's been cool to see what doors God's opening up for it.
Yeah. No, that's so key what you said right there towards the end, about being connected with the people that are there with you, and being able to walk through them step by step, whether it be a small group, whether it be the church as a whole, whether it be just doing life on life with each other. And I believe that the conversation that we've had today, I'm sure the things in the book as well carry over to business life, can be able to carry over to your family life, and the ball games and the people that you're coming into contact with there. And so I think that as we talk about being connected as a whole, like, what would you say is one way that people could take a step today and be able to say, okay, I'm going to be more intentional with being connected with the people around me?
Yeah, I actually think that I've kind of already said this, that people are greater than programs. And we just I have to. There are times where I'm at a coffee shop working on a message, whatever, answering emails, and someone comes by, and we're all guilty of this, and wants to chat. And I'm like, can you just stop talking, right? I need to go. I got to answer these emails. And we have to check our hearts to say, you know what? God placed this person right now in this moment. That email can wait. That opportunity that I need to do, it can wait a little bit, because God's provided me with an opportunity with this person. And I talk about that one example in the book of this older gentleman. And at first I'm like, all right, I don't really know what you're doing. And it actually led to a gospel conversation to talk about church and Jesus. And so if I'm too busy doing my task and not focused on people, then I'm missing it. I'm missing it as a believer, as a pastor, as a business leader. And so that's huge.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that you just said there, and I had this happen to me yesterday. I was cleaning the house all day, and I'm like, I got to get out. I got to get some fresh air. And I went for a walk, and I got about 3/4 of the way around this lake. And, I was just thinking about all the things throughout the day, and, what God is doing in my life. And all of a sudden, like, I just had this overwhelming presence of God come over me. And like, I just started breaking down, like crying. And like, I took a step forward and I could feel it lift. I'm like, no, this is a spot. Like, this is where God wants to do something. And I had to like force myself to be like, I don't care what anybody else around me is doing or thinks. Like, this is my moment with God and my time to be connected. This is where he's reaching down. And this is what the Lord told me. He said, the biggest influence that you will ever have, that is one that no one will ever see, because it starts with the rootedness of prayer. And prayer is the biggest influence that you can have for yourself and others. And so, like you said, if we're not connected with God ourselves and eliminate all the things around us to say, one of the things the Lord told me about 2 months ago was to be present in time, in the presence of God, in the present, with the present.
Yeah.
And so it was like all these things of like, okay, the future, the past, it's great. What is God saying? What is the opportunity right in front of me right now? And honestly, like that's a moment when you and I were able to connect. Reaching out on Facebook and seeing some things and saying, hey, this is awesome. Yeah, let's connect and let's reach do a show together and see what God wants to be able to do. So for those people who want to be able to connect with you, they want to get the book, share with us some things about that.
Yeah, the easiest way to reach out to me is obviously you can go to DustinDozier.com, DOZIER.com, and would love to connect with you and your church. You can get the book on Amazon called The Connected Church. And or you can visit theconnectedchurch.com. There's kind of a resource page that I've built for pastors and leaders to really help and come alongside. And really, I would appreciate if you know any ministry leaders, any pastors, church leaders that I can partner with and just help in any way, please send them my way. Would love to do that. That's really my heart to help. So I appreciate you letting me come on, Devin, and just want to help believers take a step in that connection and really having that sense of belonging beyond just attending a church for an hour.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this has been good. I'm really excited for people to grab that book. If they were to leave here with one thing that was going to impact them and transform their life, what would that be?
Well, obviously, a relationship with Jesus is huge and instrumental in your life. But I would say don't confuse building a platform from building people. I think platforms grow and they grow your reach, but the kingdom grows through discipleship. And so at the end of the day, the question isn't how many people are listening to you or following you. The real question should be, how many people are you walking with? Who's becoming more like Jesus because of you and their life? Like you said, if your church went missing, would they notice? Would they be impacted? Because metrics fade and the size of your business might crumble. But at the end of the day, people need to be shepherded. And that's what it's all about.
I love it, Dustin. Well, thank you for sharing. And for those of you watching, those of you listening, recognize that we really don't necessarily have a connection problem with each other. We have a commitment problem. People need to be committed to each other. It's easier to build content and put it out there than it is to actually build community. It's easier for us to scale systems than it is to actually shepherd and care about people. But if you call yourself a kingdom leader, you don't get to choose whether it's convenience over calling. And so you really get to press into this. I want you to think about, where is your influence really at? Where are you having an automated system or something that maybe should have or should still switch to being a little more personal? And the last thing is, where have you grown visibly, but you've neglected allowing people to belong and get connected to you, to your community as a whole? Because again, like Dustin just said, the platforms gather crowds, but we want to be intentional. We want to be intentional with our leadership, and that's what builds transformation. That's what fuels this mission that God has called us to. So for today, school is dismissed, but your influence never takes a day off. So stay bold, stay focused, and go and leave your legacy. Bye.